Is the future electric? We're about to find out. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker. On this podcast, we talk to all sorts of successful entrepreneurs, business owners, celebrities, because we want to learn what they have learned that made them so successful. Because we understand that we can learn from someone's success, but we can learn a whole lot more through their failure. Because while a smart person learns from their mistakes, a genius learns from the mistakes of others. So we love to go deep and learn it all. And with me today, I have Diana Cwick, who is with a company, a startup out of Houston called REVS. And we're going to get into what REVS stands for, but it's going to be a juicy conversation full of shocking insights. And I can't wait to lead you through it. So Diana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Catryn. I'm really excited.
I am excited to have you. So Diana and I met at an event local to Houston a couple of weeks ago and started chatting about what she does. And I'll let you tell me about it, and then we'll go from there. So what is REVS? What do you do?
So REVS stands for Refuel Electric Vehicle Solutions, and we do all things EV charging. We are a startup, and we were founded by David Aronson, who has over 40 years of multifamily experience in the multifamily industry, and Scott Wise, who was with Greystar and also has probably 40 years of experience as well. So we are very much in the multifamily niche, and we install, manage, and revenue share EV charging stations into multifamily apartment complexes nationwide.
That is pretty exciting because the EV revolution, if we can call it that, is definitely here. And a few episodes ago, we had a gentleman who is very anti-EV. When we met and we talked about it, I said, hey, I want to give someone the opportunity to come on and tell us a little bit more about why EV and give the counterpoints kind of opinion there so that we have a kind of balanced and fair look at both sides of it. So tell me a little bit more about the business model of EV and why you chose to be part of it.
So I love that you wanted to contrast with a fella who was pro oil and gas. So when it comes to electric vehicles, I think that there's always a big backlash because it's a change, right? And we as humans do not like change. We buck up against it in a big way. And there is no parity between an ICE vehicle, an internal combustion engine vehicle, and an EV experience. They're just completely different, right? We're not going to be, plugging into a charger like we do at a gas station. It's just not the same experience. You can't go and fill up for 2 minutes at a gas station the way you would with a regular vehicle versus an EV. So it's just a big change of the whole experience of refueling, right? So our main model with REVs is we are installing these EV charging stations into where people are coming home and sleeping. So the
Mm.
whole point is you get off of work, long day at work, you come home, you plug your car into a level 2 charger, which takes anywhere from 5 to 8 hours to get you, up to full. And you go home, you go to bed, you wake up, you're fully charged, right? So you never have to go to a gas station, right? So it's just a completely different experience. And there is a massive need right now for apartments or really just any living space where it comes to you want to charge at home. You don't want to go to these. I mean, you can go to these DC fast chargers where it takes maybe a half an hour, 30 minutes to fill up, right? But at the end of the day, it's just so much easier to just plug in somewhere and forget about it?
Yeah.
So that's why we are doing what we are doing. I honestly, I stumbled into this job. I kid you not. I I had no experience with electric vehicles before I started with REVs. I'll tell you right now. I've always been in sales. I can sell anything, especially if I'm in love with it. But I met the CEO, David, at a conference here in Houston that I went to because Gwyneth Paltrow was speaking and I had to be there. I said, I will do anything to see this woman, and I ran into him during the networking part. He told me what he was up to, and I said, I like this. Are you looking for people? And it came to be. It was amazing. He took a chance on me, and I've been cutting my teeth on all things EV for the past year and a half, learning amperage and range and everything that goes along with EV and the EV industry. So it's been pretty whirlwind ride.
Okay, well that's a great segue. I'd love to know, like, what's the biggest kind of aha or misconception that you had that you've learned since starting?
Regarding EVs and the electric.
Sure. Yeah.
um, I think that hmm, I think that when it comes to EVs, I did not realize how polarizing the topic is. Going back to, you said you had a fellow who was just not into, like, very against and very pro, gas. I did not realize people felt so strongly, and that I knew that there was some political, push on things, but the polarization has been insane to watch on
Mm.
the internet, those stories that come out, the way people speak about it. Even, bless her heart, I love my mother, but I'll tell you what, when I told her I wanted to get an EV, she said, over my dead body will I ever have an electric vehicle. I will hoard gas, in the back of my backyard, like, she's felt so strongly. And I think that it's concerning because at the end of the day, it's not about pushing any agenda. It comes down to, we're trying to do something for the planet, for the environment. We're trying to put good out into the world, right? It's, if we could all just get on the same page regarding that, and maybe take away the political views and, whatever else, people are getting upset about, I think that it would just be so much better overall.
I agree with you that it'd be lovely if we can get all the same page. But when I think about even, like, the world as like the macrocosm, thinking about it even as a microcosm, like when we share space, even in a much smaller, there's always the people that leave the dishes in the sink. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like it's like this underlying thing of they don't see it as an issue, I guess. I don't know. That was
Mm.
just the image that popped into my head of when you said, can we get on the same page? I'm like, we can't even get everyone to load the dishwasher.
I love that analogy. That is so true. Yeah. I mean, so I guess it comes down to just meeting people where they're at. If people are bringing hatred and trying to tear things down, just shaking it off and continuing to, support your own mission and just moving forward, and collaborating with like-minded folks that genuinely have a positive goal at the end, that want to see, good be done. I think that's all we can do, right?
Yeah, that's all. I mean, it's strange to me because when I, around other people and we just all assume that other people are like us. And it's not until we start interacting more that we realize, like, oh, there's differences here or there. And so I just always think people want to do what's right until I start seeing people not do what's right. And it's like, oh, but that never occurred to me. I didn't even realize that someone would go that way. But this is the good, bad, and the ugly. So there is an ugly question that I would like to ask, especially for those here in Texas that are listening. A couple of years ago, we had the Snowmageddon. Texas doesn't get a lot of snow, and it put a huge strain on the electric grid for the state of Texas. And they were saying, hey guys, we were almost on the brink of like the entire state being in the dark. How do we, how can we think about adding in these electric vehicles to a grid that couldn't sustain just our regular usage?
That's a great question. Yes, I get this a lot, and I've watched my CEO get this question a lot. I remember when that went down, and it was extremely worrisome. And I know I was very lucky. I was only without power for, I think, maybe three days, but some folks didn't have power for much longer, and it was it was bad. It's really bad.
Yeah.
And I all I can say is at the end of the day, when it comes to a situation like that and the EVs and charging and all of that, it's something that needs to be addressed on a really large scale. I think that at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we have the people in place that are knowledgeable, experienced, and and have the solutions in mind to make, these safeguards in place so that that never happens again. And keep in mind with the electric vehicles that are being added, over the next 5, 10 years, it's a big monster to kind of, attack. But at the end of the day, billions of dollars are being allocated to electric vehicle infrastructure. Billions. And I definitely believe that if we can put a man on the moon, then I think that we can tackle the grid and figure out a way to safeguard it from having something like that happen again. I don't know how. I don't have like a planned out strategy solution, but I do know that if we have enough folks that are trying to make the EV thing happen and put in the infrastructure to make it happen, we will find a way. 110%. Um,
I think, I mean, I know from my time, I was an environmental engineer for 20 years. And
right. So
so,
cool.
yeah, and because I do believe in helping the planet and making the world a better place. And there are there are definitely ways for innovation that sometimes don't get moving, don't get the attention that they need to move forward to go forward and to see what kind of innovation is there and to have and a lot of it comes down to politics, unfortunately. So it would be lovely if we could live in a world where this kind of research and innovation could happen in a vacuum from those kind of things and not be touched by it.
You know what? Anything is possible. I I might be speaking very idealistically at this moment, but I have faith in the coming generations. I really hope that we continue to move in a better direction where people are really trying to problem solve and come together in a way that's not going to get shut down, and I just feel like there's going to be a shift. There has to be. There has to be. If there isn't, we're going to find out the hard way, or we're going to continue to find out the hard way? So I'm putting my faith in something good has got to happen, and it's going to happen over time.
I mean, you got to think about Henry Ford, the innovation from going from the vehicle from the horse.
Horse and
That
carriage.
was a huge change, and now we can't imagine living with a horse and carriage. So, yes, change is hard, but we've done hard things and we'll continue to. I think about COVID and what a change that was for everyone. Nobody would have voluntarily gone through that, but yet we were kind of all in that together.
100%. And that brings me, I was telling you before we started about this LinkedIn post that I crafted and I was so excited about. So I'm going to touch base just because you set it up so perfectly. When it comes to things like the iPhone, okay, if you can bring yourself back to 1997, okay. Um,
Long time ago.
I know. But look at 1997. Everyone had or many people had Blackberries and Nokia phones with these physical buttons on these phones. That was the norm. We all had physical touch buttons. Okay. And then 1997, the iPhone comes out. And I have this video on my LinkedIn where Steve Jobs is talking about how when you have a physical button on a phone, you can't upgrade it. You cannot change this keypad. Okay. So when the iPhone came out, it was a digital touch screen keypad that could be, the software could be upgraded over time. You know, it was starting, I think it started operating system 10 back then.
Oh
You know,
man.
I don't know what operating system we're at now, but it was 10 back then, the X. And you know, it was such a massive change. People were thrown by this change of keypad. I know a lot of people stuck with their Blackberries for years. And there were bugs. There were things that needed to be worked out with the iPhone. You know, it took a while for everyone to come around and adopt this phone. There's still people who don't like iPhones, right? Like, you know, you got Team Android or whatever, right? But
Team Android here.
oh, okay. Hey, no hate, no hate. I'm an Apple lover, so that's me. But I still have love for you. Um, but if you think about it, when that iPhone came out, that was huge. Now people can't exist without their iPhone, their smartphone. Okay,
Yeah.
if I lose my battery, I can't check my schedule. I can't check, to see, how my kids are doing. Like there's so many factors. Everything is in these
Our
phones.
life has been
Our
reduced.
life, it's embedded in our phones, right?
Yeah.
So if you think back to 1997, where people were like, "This phone is ridiculous. What are they doing?" Right? It's the same thing with electric vehicles, And to add on to it, it's kind of interesting with the EVs. They have software. You've got these big old screens where everything is in the screen. And Tesla just had a recall very recently because the font was too small on some instructions.
Yeah.
And instead of having to take schedule a time at the dealership, take off time maybe from work, all of the things that happen with a recall, right? It's just a simple software upgrade, just like when we have our cell phone, you just, upgrade available. So these EVs are completely different from a regular gas vehicle. But at the same time, there are a lot of advantages. There's a lot of pluses, so, but it's different and people get rubbed weird by different, so.
My very first boss told me a story of he remembers when email came into his company and they went around and they were asking people like, would you like an email? And he said, no, why would I want that?
Oh my gosh.
I know, because we didn't know.
Yeah, we didn't know.
We didn't know. And we've learned so much and changed so much in that time. So it's, yes, I can see both sides of the argument, which is why I'm so grateful to have you on here to have both sides to it, because there are so many sides to life and we're so quick to hear one side and say, yes, I hear some truth to that and that resonates with me. So I mean, come on, let's be honest. We don't take the time to do half the things that we should be doing for ourselves. So taking the time to hear the other side of the argument rarely happens. But I think that's important for making what's the best informed decision, for ourselves. And if for those early adopters of EV who, God bless them because they're the ones working out all the bugs right
Yep.
now and making it work smoother and faster. So I applaud them. And at some point we'll all look back and be like, can you believe we like didn't want an EV?
Exactly. Exactly. I think that a lot of people are going to be looking back and saying that, honestly, but I'm in it, so
Yeah, exactly.
yes.
Well,
Super
tell me
biased.
more about the business model because I really love how REVS has this set up. And I think it's really an interesting thing for all different kinds of business owners to think about when they're setting up their business on how to make it as win-win-win as possible for everyone.
Right. So I think what sets us apart, because there are some competing businesses out there, something that we really pride ourselves on is we have this real estate background. So we know how to really serve property owners and we know how to take care of the residents, right? We're big on customer service, client success. We want to make sure after we've made a deal with you that we are with you, throughout the many years that you're with us and we're taking care of you because at the end of the day, you sell someone something and you walk away. It's like, okay, well, did you ever care about me? So we're very big on making relationships work with our customers. Something that a lot of manufacturers of electric vehicle charging stations do is they focus on numbers. They want to sell you as many charging stations as possible because that's the dollar signs for them, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to, properties, every property is different. You may only have two people driving electric vehicles on your property. You don't need 20 charging stations. That's insane. And there's network fees that need to be paid annually for these charging stations that are, that are not cheap. So we are agnostic when it comes to brand of charging stations. We will decide what brand of charging station makes the most sense for each property because there's no cookie cutter. Every property is different. You've got high rises, you've got garden style. Everything needs to be looked at, and the details need to be considered when it comes to charging stations. And we are conservative. We are going to look at how many electric vehicles are on the property, and we're going to maybe only want to install one or two charging stations because that's maybe all you need right now, you
Mm.
know? And we also have to look at how much electricity, going back to the grid, how much electricity is available on the property. You may only have so much, and we have worked with electric companies like CenterPoint, and they sometimes will come in and they will give extra energy to a property because it's a win-win for them,
Sure.
So there's a lot of different factors that go into installing these stations. What we do recommend moving forward is if you have a property that you're building that's in construction, to get the EVs installed that way to save the costs. The bottom line is so much better versus retrofitting and having to bore into concrete and figure out, how much electricity we can actually pull, to use these stations. So there's a lot of different factors. But I think what I love about our company is that we are constantly learning. We're constantly making sure that we look at all the details, that we follow up with our property owners, property managers. We are very much a white glove turnkey service. We want to take care of everyone and make sure that everything is being done so people feel secure because again, it's change. No one understands this stuff. No one gets these stations. They're like, what is this thing, that we're installing under our property? So we just want to be knowledgeable. We want to give as much value as possible. And we want people to just feel comfortable with this change, and walk them step by step through it. So it's pretty.
I I love that, but the one question that really comes to mind is, I completely understand the idea of working with the developers on the front end to make sure they're in there, but then you don't necessarily know how many EVs are going to be there. So how do you plan for that without knowing those numbers ahead of time?
Right. So we actually have a completely dedicated person on our team who is pre-construction. He's our guy. So whenever I have a project with a developer, architect, construction, you name it, whatever, I loop him in and I have him come talk about running conduit. There's a thing called EV ready, meaning where you will set everything up, run the conduit, run the wiring, get everything set up, and then just leave that space empty for when you want to install another station. So there is such a thing as preparing for the future and not necessarily installing the station right then and there because maybe you don't need it yet,
Mm.
especially if it's a brand new property. But we do believe in getting things EV ready. So we may say, just to start, we're only going to maybe install two stations because we don't know what things are going to look like because the property's not even, leased up yet, right? But we may say, let's go ahead and get, these other 5, 6, 7 parking spaces EV ready and run all of the conduit and have all of the energy and the panels and the breaker and have everything ready to go for when you're ready to add more stations.
Mm.
And we kind of look at that and plan ahead. So that way, when it does come time, you have what you need. So
I appreciate that, Diana. And I got one last question for you. And that is, kind of going back to the things that, people don't understand and people kind of shut down when they don't understand. And so what sort of activities and things are you as a company, you personally or as a company, doing to help market it and educate your target audience? Because I think that's something that's applicable to so many people in business, especially like how do you get your information out there? And now when you're dealing with something that is controversial, you're here based in Houston where there's a ton of oil and gas and very like historical oil and gas. Like there are oil and gas families. So how does that all work?
Right. So we have a few different avenues. Obviously, the internet is a huge one. We do have a marketing team within the company. We are on multiple platforms, pushing out content and letting everyone know what we offer. I myself and the head of sales, we go and we network at conferences quite often, which I think is really helpful. I feel like just face to face, person to person is literally the best way to get the word out and just, get your information out there. And especially coming out of COVID times, we really need more face to face stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and then I myself have begun recording a podcast where,
Congratulations.
yeah, I am going to be basically interviewing folks that are in the EV industry. And my main goal is really just to gather information, find, different ideas, different solutions, because right now we are in this very strange growing pain, Wild West kind of space with the EV world. So I'm just trying to bring as many ideas together as possible and see if, I can add value in that way. Um, and then our founder also, he's got a wealth of knowledge and he's just so passionate. So he's going around and he's doing tons of podcasts with a bunch of folks in the EV space and the real estate space as well. And he's sharing a lot of his knowledge and information. So lots of sharing.
I mean, and I think that's the biggest takeaway for anyone is that it's a lot of just going and saying the same things over and over and over again to whatever sort of audience you can get in front of, which sometimes feels exhausting on our end because it's like, oh my gosh, I've said this so many times, but the other people haven't. So it's kind of like when you're like in a band and you have that hit song and you have to
Yes.
play that hit song for like the next 25 years.
Yes. Exactly that. Exactly that.
Well, this has been absolutely phenomenal. I really appreciate you for coming on. I'm so glad to have met you. Please tell people how they can reach out to you and how they can reach out to Revs and who are the best, like who are the people that you want to are looking to connect to.
Right. So you can find us at www.refuelevs.com. That's our website. I'm Diana Cwick. You can find me on LinkedIn. David Aronson is the CEO and founder. Definitely recommend go give him a follow. He's fantastic. And you can follow Revs on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, stay tuned for my podcast coming out. It's going to be called Charge Talk. So.
Oh, good. Absolutely. Well, if it comes out before this episode's released, I'll make sure to put the links in the show notes as well as all the other great information you put because we want to make it as easy as possible for everybody.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And to the listeners, thank you so much for being here. I hope you received some value of this, made you think about something that you hadn't thought of before. As you know, I love to bring you great guests just like this one. Please make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast, rate it, share it with your audience. It really helps out and helps me to find amazing guests like this to bring you great content. Until next time, everyone, take care.